Today I want to tell you a story. This story is about a young boy by the name of Ollie who was sitting in his living room, minding his own business, playing with his G.I. Joes, and fantasizing about summer. You see, young Ollie was still in elementary school at this point, and he was thinking about the summer holidays, which were fast approaching, and he was fantasizing about all the fun he was going to have during this time off. And while he was fantasizing about this, he started to think too deeply. He started to ask questions, and these questions led him to a terrifying discovery. See, what happened was, young Ollie was thinking about the holidays that were coming up, and he realized that after 2 months of summer, he would be going back to school again. And so this realization was accompanied with a sense of disappointment, because the thing he was looking forward to so badly was going to be short-lived. And afterward, he was going to go back to the grind. Back to sitting in a classroom with a bunch of kids he didn't like, at a desk which was uncomfortable. Back to school where he would have to learn a bunch of crap he wasn't interested in, and which he felt had no value for him as a human being. Yes, that's the kind of kid I was. At this point, I must have been in maybe grade 3 or 4. But as I said in the past, I was quite accustomed to being inside my own head and thinking and contemplating and using my imagination to keep myself entertained. And so as I started to think about how summer was just a temporary respite, I started to project myself further and further into the future, and I started to think about what would come next. So I turned over to my mother, who was just sitting there in the living room, reading a magazine or doing something, and I started to ask her, "Hey Mom, when I'm done with elementary school, what comes next?" And she said, "High school." I was like, fair enough. After high school, what happens? And at this point, my parents were not Jehovah's Witnesses yet, so in their minds, I was going to go to college. I was going to be the first person in my family to go to university. So my mother said, after high school, you're going to go to university. And then what? She was puzzled by that one. After a few seconds of thinking about it, she says, after university, you're going to get a really good paying job. Because back then, a university degree was still worth something. Or at least my parents thought that it was worth something. You probably know what my follow-up question was. And then what? Now she really was confused, because after high school and after university and after getting a good job or a career, what comes next? She wasn't able to answer me, and I became very distressed, because I realized then and there that the future had nothing for me. That it was just a long line of goals, or even worse, hoops to jump through. And that eventually these hoops would lead me not to some utopian vision, not to some dream life, but to death. And this was extremely disturbing. I think that was my first glimpse of the truth which I realized during my cubicle epiphany. It was my first experience with this topic of mortality and life and meaning. What I was really asking my mother that day was not what comes next, but what's the point? What am I working towards? In school, I'm working toward high school. In high school, I'm working toward college. In college, I'm working toward a career. And in my career, I'm working towards death. Because there's nothing after. Or at least my parents had nothing to offer. They had no theories, no ideas, no hypotheses about what comes next and what the point of it all is. To my mother, the point was simply to work make money, hopefully have a happy life, and then die. Which is ironic, because now my mother believes something very, very different. But at the time, she was a heathen. She had no sense of greater purpose, no sense of the divine. And I sincerely don't think she has a sense of that yet either. But that's another story. Ultimately, what this did for me, this experience, this realization, was plant seeds that would eventually bloom, but not for many, many years. This was my first experience with the big questions, and ultimately the art of living. Because what I was searching for, in the wrong place of course, was meaning and purpose. And meaning and purpose can never be found in the future. It's only found in the immediate moment, in the here and now. If you have a purpose, you have to fulfill it here and now. If you tell yourself, I'll do it next year, or I'll do it when I retire, or whatever, then all you're doing is delaying what you could be doing right now. So as I sat there in the living room with my G.I. Joes laying on the ground, forgotten, I realized in my heart that there had to be more to life than this long line of hoops to jump through. I felt it. And the way my mother casually admitted that there was no purpose, no goal, no meaning, only made me more certain that she was wrong. It made me confident that there was more to life than this meaningless rat race. Now, of course, in grade 3 or 4, I didn't have the intellectual tools to further explore this topic, so I set it aside. But throughout my life and leading up to my cubicle epiphany, there were other little things like this which happened. Experiences, chance encounters, discoveries, which further laid the groundwork for what would happen in 2013, what I call my cubicle epiphany. So every once in a while, instead of doing a daily bread video or vlogging about some metaphysical, spiritual, or philosophical concept, I'm going to share some stories with you about my life and some of the experiences which have led me here and to the beliefs and practices which inform my life. All right, well, that's it for me. Pulling into the driveway as we speak. Thanks for joining me, and don't forget to live well, my friends.